someone please open us up in prayer? Alright, Paul.
Lord, just thank you for just bringing us all here this morning, and giving us all your rest. Lord, as you just speak to us today, Lord, let us just apply it to today and tomorrow and so far this week, Lord, and just bless us as we just go back, as we leave this room, Lord, to not fall into our flesh, Lord. Amen.
So for me, at a young age, I've understood that there could be a lot of problems in my life. But what I couldn't anticipate is how would I respond to those problems. Sure, I realized that people could hurt me, but how would I react to those who hurt me? And in my life, I've made the mistake oftentimes of becoming bitter. And you see, for Christians and non-Christians, bitterness is a destructive attitude in which we're greatly hardened in some way towards someone or something. So this morning I want to read Hebrews chapter 12, verse 14 and 15. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 14 and 15. And it says, "Pursue peace with all men and holiness, without which no one will see the Lord, looking diligently, lest anyone fall short of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness spring up cause trouble, and by this many become defiled." You see, bitterness is such a harmful thing in your life, that if it exists, you must deal with it. And maybe you're sitting here right now and saying, why do we even need to listen to the rest of this? I don't even feel bitter right now. But the thing is, bitterness is so harmful that you need to look out for it so that it doesn't happen in your life. So you need to examine the causes of bitterness. The thing is, bitterness can be the result of things that others do to you and that you yourself do. The thing is, maybe you feel disappointed, that you really wanted something to happen. You expected it to happen even, but it didn't. Or in your mind, you imagined something was a certain way, but when you looked at reality, it wasn't. And now you're living with that discouragement and it's led to bitterness in your life. Or maybe you feel hurt. Maybe someone's hurt you intentionally or unintentionally, but regardless, it left a mark in your life. Or in terms of things that you do, maybe you tried really hard for something, or maybe you didn't try hard enough. But it seems like it doesn't matter because in the end, there was failure and you're having that weighing you down. Or maybe the things you didn't try at all. And you look back on your life and now it's too late to do anything, and right now you're in a state of regret. And that too is weighing you down. Or when you look inside the lives of others, and they have things that you seem to not have, and you feel jealous. And what I want to say is when we in our lives choose to not rely on God, we allow these unavoidable circumstances to lead us to bitterness. And so maybe in your life these causes have led you to bitterness. And the truth is maybe you want to feel bitter. Maybe you want to make a statement towards someone and say, do you understand that this is how you made me feel? But the thing that we see in this passage is that bitterness behaves like a root. And that it's not just confined to one person, but it spreads throughout your life, and it can place something in you that shouldn't be there. For example, when we read the Bible and we see King Saul, you see King Saul is very bitter towards David because he was jealous. But his bitterness was not confined to how he just interacted with David. But in the way that he went with his kids, he was very harsh. And in his relationship with God at that time, it was already so damaged, and bitterness was not helping it at all. And that's the worst thing about bitterness, is that bitterness damages your relationship with God. The thing is, if you're feeling hardened towards something, that you want to feel animosity towards someone, you're saying, God, I'm going my way, you're pulling me to be loving, but I don't want to do that now. Or anytime that there's unforgiveness in your life, you will notice it in your prayer life, because there's going to be that blockage in your communication with Him. Or when you hate someone, and hate seems like just a petty little thing, but it's so real in our lives. But that hatred will not be directed towards just one person. But that hatred is also a sin that's against God. And overall, that bitterness is going to hinder God's blessings in your life when He wants the best things for you. And in terms of the way that others interact with you, they can see the bitterness in your life. That think about in your life, how many times have you met someone and something seemed a little off, maybe in the way that they spoke or in their actions because they were bitter. And that can cause people to feel repelled away from us. Or when you interact with them, you only see the negative inside their lives. And to not only see the negative in others, but also just to see the negative in life, to go through life with a negative mentality and just say, where am I even going anymore? Because this person hurt me, I feel this way, I'm not going to go anywhere. And I'll tell you personally, for me, like I said, I've been bitter a lot of times. And a lot of times I'll tell you that honestly, I wanted to be better. I wanted to get someone's attention or call attention to a certain issue. But what I found is that bitterness is never the solution, it is the problem itself. Now what it really does when you think it's going to be the solution because you're not depending on God, what it really does is just hurt your relationship with Him. It damages that communication, hurts your witness as a Christian. It's going to harm your loved ones who you care so deeply for. And for some, it'll just cause them to feel indifferent towards you. So like I said, that bitterness might be easier to detect in others, but it's harder to see in yourself. So I just want to go through a few questions today. And the first one is very simple, and that's, are you bitter? Do you feel hardened towards someone or something in some way? Maybe you walk in the hallways and you're suddenly being happy with everyone, and you see this person and something just kind of strikes you in your life. Are you feeling bitter at all? Or maybe right now you don't feel bitter, but what you find out is that you're feeling bitter towards people constantly. Maybe towards the same person on and off, or towards a group of people. And maybe the truth is that you're running into the wrong people all the time. But what happens most of the time is that there's a root inside you that leads to bitterness. Or when you interact with others, you only see the bad things in them. So you just ridicule them. It could be your parents, it could be anyone else. But you just see the negative in them. Or maybe you don't interact with them at all and you just cut yourself off and say the world hates me. Or I just don't like this, so I'm not going to take any part in this. But what if it's something that God wants in your life? In your communication with Him? Are you just ignoring Him a lot of times because He brings up a certain person? Because I'll tell you that for me in my prayer life, sometimes, I'll just say, God, open me up to you. But then He talks about a certain person and I'm just like, whatever. And so I shun Him away. So if this is ever true in your life right now or at any moment, then there's bitterness inside your life. And the thing is, then how do you deal with your bitterness? And the most important thing I can say about bitterness is that it must be dealt with by taking it to God. No matter what you do, it must be dealt with by taking it to God. Because why? A lot of times we want to just talk things over with other people, and yes, others can be involved after we talk it over with God. Because I'll tell you, for me and for a lot of others, what happens is, we feel bad towards someone, so we'll say, I'll go talk things over. And then all of a sudden, everything feels good, just for us to go a little bit more in life, to find ourselves bitter at the same person, or to feel bitter towards a group of people. And why is that? Because remember that bitterness behaves like a root. And that you can chop the top of the plant off by talking things over with others, but the root is still there. And only through taking that root to Christ can He show you what that root is. And transform your life to remove that root in your life. It can be something that you've been holding on to since you were a kid. But something that you need to let go of now and take it up with Him. And afterwards, to forgive. To forgive others. Maybe they've wronged you and they still don't realize it. Or they realize it, but they didn't say sorry to you. But forgive just as Christ forgave us. And that sounds so easy to say, but remember when He went on that cross, He did it so that we could be free. And so that we could live for Him. Therefore, you don't need to chain your own life to your own unforgiveness. And you don't need to put chains on others just because they did something wrong in your life. Don't just forgive others, but forgive yourself. Maybe you feel like the worst person because you've done something and it's just so bad and it feels unforgivable. But if Christ has forgiven you, can you forgive yourself? There are things you look back on your life and the reality is you can't change anything. But you can learn from it, and what you do now can affect what you do in the future. That's why, contrary to bitterness, forgiveness is so much more powerful. Because it can affect and strengthen your relationship with God, release others, and release yourself. And if possible, talk things over with the people who you're bitter with. But the thing is, maybe they don't want to talk with you, then fine. But fight for the relationships that God wants in your life. So how do you know? You need to examine your life. The thing is, you need to ask in your own life right now, are you continuing in something that God doesn't want you to do? I mean, are you striving for something that you know in your life God doesn't want you to do? Maybe the reason that you're bitter right now inside your life is the fact that, maybe you shouldn't have been here in the first place. That's why we must have the mentality to say, God, what do you see? God, it might seem justified to me, but is that really what your word says? To have the mentality, God, what do you want? Not what I want. And if He shows anything up in your life that shouldn't be there, then cease in what is wrong and continue in what is right, whether it is in habits or relationships. Am I saying to hate people? Absolutely not. But to have the wisdom to learn to keep a distance. Because nothing in your life will be worth holding on to if it harms your relationship with God in any way. It might seem justified to you or to the world, but is that what God wants in your life? And in your relationship with God, pray that He will remove that bitterness. Whatever is there, that animosity or that root that leads to bitterness, only He can remove it and to give you a clean heart. Psalm 51:10, that's one of my favorite verses, and it says, create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. That only through taking your life to Him can He give you the right joy, the right peace, the right understanding. That maybe in your life you've been expecting things from others and you feel disappointed, but did your expectations come from God or from yourself? Maybe there are a lot of different roots in your life, but it's God the strongest root in you. And after this experience, what you need to do is to learn from your bitterness. To learn from it. That learn that in the pits of your life, however things are, no matter how dark they are, The thing is, God is even there to love you. That He can teach you things about yourself that you've never known through bitterness. He can strengthen you, give you wisdom to apply to the other relationships in your life. And you see, the opportunities to be better will always arise. I'll tell you that even last week as I was going over this message, I found myself in a lot of opportunities to be better. I found myself just feeling ready to be hardened. But through relying on Christ, I realized that my life, the purpose of my life, is not to feel bitter, is not to promote hatred and animosity. The purpose of my life is to show a love that only Christ can give me. It's to show a peace that's true. And I don't know inside your life who's hurt you. I don't know who will hurt you. But God knows, and what I urge you to do is to rely on Him. Take your bitterness, your animosity, your hatred, your hardness, whatever it might be, up with Him. And seek to avoid bitterness in your life. Because we're meant to be examples of His love, His peace, and His holiness. And Father, I thank you for all who you have gathered here today. Lord, I pray that in our hearts, Lord, if there's anything that you don't want to be there, especially bitterness, Lord, that you teach us, Lord. We're not strong enough to deal with it on our own, but we take it up with you. Please guide us in our lives, Lord, to live properly for you. In your name, pray.